Hi guys, so we have Mark here and Inessa, and we're gonna talk about spirituality and religion and where that all comes from. So Mark, what do you think about
Where spirituality comes from?
Mhm.
Well, I don't know. I mean, can I refer to the first video? I mean, that's really where the first podcast. That's where spirituality comes from. It's a remnant of a whole bunch of psychological processes happening to cause us to operate in the normal way that we do as a biological creature. You know, the fact that we have developed a means to have a higher intelligence per se compared to other species doesn't negate the fact that we're still the smartest monkeys, and we still have smartest monkey problems, including but not limited to why does that happen? Why am I afraid of this? You know, what is the purpose? Why am I here as one of the smartest monkeys?
Okay. So basically biological.
Well, the spiritual component is certainly psychological, and the basis for that is biological. So it's chemistry into biology and biology into psychology. That's where the spiritual component comes from, and then based on that, you get a religious component, which we find evidence that even previous hominids like Neanderthals had probably some belief that equated to what we would consider to be religion. But religion and spirituality are different. Religion, it comes from the root word legare, the Latin word, which means to tie something together. So to engage in religion is to reconnect or to retie something. It has the same basic root as ligament, ligature, legion, and legate, which is the in the hierarchy of certain political structures and religious institutions. But it just means to bind something together, to tie something together. And so the unifying factor of a religion is a cultural one. The driving mechanism behind it, why a person would engage in that, is the quote-unquote spiritual mechanism. But you have to remember that a spiritual experience is not a it's not magic. It's not leprechauns and fairy tales, and it's not even burning bushes and hordes of locusts. It's what's left of all of these interacting and sometimes competing brain functions that we have both on a higher and lower order, and the things that we interpret as the spiritual experience. People call it a religious experience. It isn't a religious experience. A religious experience is going to Sunday school and hearing about Jesus and eating cookies and drinking Kool-Aid. That's a religious experience. It's based in a religious institution. You went there, you heard some message about their doctrine, you drank the Kool-Aid, and you left.
So that's religious.
That's a religious experience. A spiritual experience, and we talked about this before, is essentially a psychotic experience. It's an overdrive of normal brain function. It's driven by a chemical process. It's an extreme chemical process at the actual moment that it's happening, but it's not some mystical or magical thing. It's a very animal thing, and it comes out in very animal ways.
Like what? Give an example.
Well, the big three, the big religions, Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, they all hold to the belief that God created human beings in His own image, and that, of course, comes from the earliest part of the religion, the Hebraic texts. And so we put ourselves as gods. God looks like us. God is a big, glowing man sitting on a marble throne with a long beard and, dispensing judgment from this patriarchal seat. And so that's very primitive. If such a being did exist, if such an entity as God existed, and I don't mean God like the Christian God, I just mean like a universal spiritual being, it would be so far beyond the capacity of human beings to conceptualize, to think about, to bring that into their minds would not be possible. We can't even think about distance properly. We can't think about, the universe having a radius of 43 billion light years. Well, how big is that? 43 billion light years? It's or actually I guess it's 46 and change. But we can say that. We can look at it written down with a bunch of zeros behind it and say, oh, that's the number right there, but how big is that? We can't get that in our head. We have no frame of reference to understand something that big. So that's just a single dimension of space-time which we can see. We can see it or experience it through the light that comes traveling through it, but we can't contemplate this vastness, this bigness, this hugeness. So if we can't even get the concept of the vastness of time-space, how can we understand the mechanisms of an entity that exists above time-space, who has, for all intents and purposes, magical powers and the ability to exercise power and domain over the universe in which you live as though it were a toy? We have no frame of reference for that. So what do? We do the animal thing. We confine God in a human body, and we make him look just like us, and he thinks like us, and he's got a son just like us. Although I heard he started hanging out with hippies, that guy, so probably want to watch out for him. But
okay, let's get on topic. So spirituality and religion looks like they're all connected, right?
Well, one leads to the other.
Yeah, so we start with spiritual and we go into religion. That it's more like a form of something, of a way to control, of a way to organize. And like you pointed out that when it comes to religion means to unite, to bring together, right? So that
but it almost never serves that function.
It doesn't. Yeah, exactly. So people just made a ritual of it.
I mean, on a tribal level, like if you look at the Yanomami Indians who live in the Orinoco Valley, Venezuela, Brazil, down in the jungles of South America, they have a unified belief, and they have unified mythos. And they are a unified culture, and they don't have to interact with other cultures and other religions and other beliefs to have those shifted, and the particular beliefs that they have bind them together in a cultural way. So in that sense, religion does operate to be this unifying thing. However, it only works in monochrome. If you get that in a multispectral thing, you end up with people trying to burn each other's castles down, and that's kind of what we see. Religion is misnamed because it doesn't do that. It doesn't bind people together. It doesn't tie them together, except in very small groups.
Well, it gathers them together.
Well, it does. They like to get together.
There is some organization. It's not for the purpose it should be. Where it comes from, the word comes from. It doesn't, but brings them together to organize into something. A way to make money, a way to manipulate, control.
Well, yeah, and it's been about control. And the religious belief, the primary religious belief in the Western world. It's very strange when you think about Christianity being this dominant force in European history. And it was only because of the Romans. And, first, of course, when Christianity first started out for the first 350 years, 400 years, people were burning and killing and Christians and feeding them to lions. So, it wasn't looked on as a good thing. And then, you have a Roman emperor in Constantine who decided that a victory at a battle was because he saw a cloud that was shaped like Jesus. And the next thing you know, he's converted to Christianity. And he legalized the religion. He didn't make it the state religion, but he legalized it.
Mm-hmm.
And then
in that video, let's make religion of it.
And then later, another emperor after Constantine named Theodosius decided that he was going to make it the state religion and all other religions had to go. And that was really a power grab. But when you think about the vast Roman Empire, which was essentially the remnants of the empire of Alexander the Great, everything from Macedonia and Persia over to Asia Minor and Turkey and down into the Mediterranean. This vast empire, and then of course they seized it, and then they did what the Romans did, which is expand it and push their agenda rather aggressively on other cultures. And so the idea that people want to reconnect with who they are from a historical viewpoint or a cultural viewpoint. First of all, it'd be very difficult with, especially in some place like America where people are like, well, what are you? It's like, well, my ancestors are from Germany and Africa and China and, and 3 other places and some Native Americans. So that would be hard. But even if you chose one of those, the indigenous religions of those cultures, of the cultures from which these people came from, are extinct, and nobody knows anything about them. The Romans completely severed that cultural tie back to the past and the ancestors and all of that stuff because it was in their best interest to enforce Romanization on everybody. And so people in the Western world, in Europe, and in America, they're essentially following primarily the belief system of the people who murdered and enslaved their ancestors.
How funny is that?
It's horrifying, and even more so, if you wanted to take it out of that historical context and say, well, that was, most of Europe fell to Christianity, pretty quickly after Theodosius. So, I guess it got to Ireland in the 10th century, very late, but the rest of Europe, wasn't so cut off. And so, so those people were all enslaved. Their religions were destroyed. The people that built Stonehenge started, going to the Temple of Claudius
completely confused to who they pray for, who their God is.
Yeah.
And never questioned that even. Can you imagine?
Well, actually, they did. They had a big.
Good for them.
Well, the Britons. I mean, the Gauls fought. In what is now France, the Gauls fought Julius Caesar, and Julius Caesar wrote a book about it. about his war in Gaul, and then what's it called? Umbilical Gallica, the war of Gaul, the war in Gaul, and then he tried to. Then he invaded Britain, but that didn't last, but like a few months, and he had to give up and go home. And then later, Claudius, one of his descendants, decided to invade Britain. And the first thing that they did is they went up to the religious center of the basic religion there, the Druids. They had a cultural seat in Anglesey, Wales. This place called the Isle of Mona, and they killed everybody there. They killed all the Druids. And those are people who don't have a written history, so when you kill their priesthood, you killed their ancestor lines and the stories about the deeds of their great grandpa and whatever else, with all these other ties back to the beginning of your culture were severed, and then of course people became acculturated into Romanism or Romanized, and were essentially slaves to Rome. And then when Rome broke down and moved away, they went back to Italy, and their armies fell apart. The cultures of Europe collapsed into what we now know as the Dark Ages, because they stayed there just long enough to destroy all of the cultural lines back through time and replace it with this Roman version of Christianity, which isn't even, it's not even a Middle Eastern religion.
Okay, so what is your point?
It's Greek.
What is your point then?
Well, so the thing is that when you look at spirituality is not what you believe or where you go or where that came from. It's that psychology of having to deal with the things you can't explain. Yeah, we know where the lightning comes from now, but we don't know why the flood happened and killed all of these people at this inopportune time, and we don't know why that tornado just happened to touch down right there and destroy this whole... We know the basics, we know the weather, we understand the wind, we understand this, but people still fall into this spiritual place because they're like, oh, all of these good people that were...
So you're saying that people weren't born with spiritual...
People are born with the propensity.
But you're saying right now that it's mostly learning experiences and what it can be.
Well, of course it is. Of course it is.
Well, a combination of it, but,
your personal experiences, they factor into it, but if you're born in Saudi Arabia, you're going to be a Muslim, and you're going to believe in Allah, and you're going to believe
into it.
And you're going to pray 5 times a day, and you're going to do your, give alms and do all the things that you're supposed to do for that particular belief system. If you took that same child who was born there and adopt him to somebody who lives in India, you had this child whose lineage back through time was Islam, but they were raised in a Hindu household by Hindus, so now they're Hindu.
Okay, so if you, for example, were placed in an environment and you walk up there and there is no one around, would you have that spiritual component already, and you'll start to developing certain
that's what we do when we're born.
Beliefs based on...
But that's what we do when we're born.
Right away, but we learn from the environment. But if you were alone and there is nothing to interact with, you wouldn't even know how to name.
Well, when you say that there's nothing to interact with, if you're
interact in terms of not nature but people or culture.
So you're saying
if there is no culture, people to teach you something, you weren't born into religion.
So like you're lost in the jungle as a child or something.
Yes, and you don't remember the past at all. You cannot even say that that's a tree, and you don't have experiences, memory of experiences of your own. So
obviously,
when you suspend all knowledge.
Obviously, if you were if you had no input, then you would have no consciousness of anything, and your psyche would break down. You wouldn't be able to have no input. You put people in a sensory deprivation chamber for 10 seconds, for an hour, and some of them lose their mind.
Well, just just maybe, like a hypothetical example.
Well, then I could only give a hypothetical answer, but
go ahead, give me that hypothetical answer then.
Spiritualism is like the computer. It is the mainframe of our psychology upon which we run the software of belief or religion. So everybody is born with that built-in hardware, and they have a framework by which they can develop a spiritual or some other type of belief system. But it's not, it's generally esoteric and insubstantial. And then if they are fed Christian information, they'll have a Christian ideology, or if they're fed Islamic information or whatever belief system it is, Native American, their particular tribe or group. Everybody's going to absorb that and press those beliefs into the psychological mold of their spiritual selves. So everybody who's born a human being has it. Why? Well, because we spend a lot of our time afraid and being killed by things, like every other little creature on Earth.
Well, are you taking into consideration that you don't have experiences? So you were a hypothetical example that we were talking about.
If you have no, you can't. You couldn't even answer that question. You're saying a hypothetical situation where somebody doesn't have any experiences.
Yes.
And then you put them somewhere, are they going to have a spiritual experience? No. If they have no experiences, they have no information at all. Zero input to a neural network equals zero output.
So if they're standing there in the dark, awake, and not knowing anything, basically, and in an unknown state, they wouldn't have a spiritual component. This is what you're saying? They wouldn't have that spirituality in them.
It would be like having a computer that didn't have a program running.
So you're saying people are like computers programmed?
Well,
you're saying that
it's the closest analogy that I can give. Human psychology is obviously not built like a computer. It's built very different from a computer. It would take a very different functioning kind of mechanism but it's the closest thing that I can equate to. I could say, spiritualism is a cup. Religion is the water that you put in it, or whatever you put in it. So if you fill your cup with something, that's, it takes your spirituality holds that form for that particular belief system. And I think it's important to remember that belief system can be abbreviated as BS.
Well, at this point, I'm more interested what do you think about that. You're basically saying that we have to have some experiences or knowledge if we want to.
Not necessarily knowledge, but you have to have
experiences.
You have to have experiences.
So basically, our mind, you're talking about a mind. Basically, we don't have continuance of life or consciousness that continues on. Because if you are saying that everything is connected only to mind, then it's biological. You're dead. That's it. Nothing else. So spirituality then is nothing but only experiences and mind activity. Nothing mystical, right? This is what you're saying.
Well, it's not mystical in the sense like Harry Potter and a magic wand mystical, or the zombie guy who spent 3 days dead and woke up again and was like, here I am, I used to be dead, check me out.
Well, I'm not talking about
I made fish sandwiches. I got some bread and fishes. I'm gonna make sandwiches for everybody. No. What I mean is
you just denied that. Well, that's actually related to the religion. You say that every religion has something, a continuance of life, or you go to heaven, or you go.
Well, no, not necessarily.
Or you reincarnate.
There are faiths who believe that
there is a promise that to people that we are going on, so don't be too comfortable here in this world.
Well, but
you're going to be punished,
you're
going to be saved.
But the reason that that idea exists, and it's so prevalent, and you could see it in a Roman religion. It's a Roman religion.
Mm-hmm.
Christianity is a Roman take on a Greek faith that was written about a guy who didn't speak the language the book was written in. Slavery in the Roman world was very common, it was very real, and it happened to everybody. Didn't matter what color you were, didn't matter what country you were from. If you weren't a Roman citizen and Rome came to your door, you would become a vassal or a slave of Rome. You didn't have any choice. And sometimes even a Roman citizen could mess up to the point where their rights would be stripped and they would become a slave, or worse. So the idea that don't worry about this world. This world is here to challenge you and to keep you doing this list of things that that we want you to do, and not to do this other list of things that we don't want you to do. And if you do that just right, and it doesn't matter if you're poor because God's testing you, eventually you're going to die and have everything. This is what you tell a slave. It's a slave belief. It's a slave religion. It's designed to make people slaves.
Well, I'm not talking about what the intention of religion or how they operate their business. It's not about that. It's more about that when they have a religion, it comes from somewhere, or spiritual point probably, that we don't cease to exist. We are existing, but in a different way, and every religion has their own expression or story about
Well,
it.
yeah, because, I mean, if you look at the...
So they believe that the consciousness or spirit, or everybody calls it in a different way, different word for it, continues to go on in every religion. So explain to me your position on this. I want to know what you think. Are we continuing to go on, or we stop existing with this biological existence? Because from where you're coming from, and whatever we are talking about, you say that consciousness and religion and spirituality is all connected to the brain activity, and if brain dies, that's it. We are done. We'll come back. We have to take a break for now, and we'll see you in a few.